All right. Good evening, everybody. For the record, it's Thursday, May 9th, 2019. It's 5:15 p.m. The City Council is back from our tour of the Garden Hilton Inn, and I've called the meeting to order. First item that we usually do is our pledge to our flag. So, Councilmember Bailey, would you lead us?
I will. Stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And for roll call this evening, we have 6 council members present, and we have Councilmember Huffaker with us by phone. So we have all 7 tonight. First item on our agenda is the consent items, which includes this evening's agenda, vouchers, and minutes from our previous meetings.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion that we adopt our consent items, which include this evening's agenda, the vouchers, and the minutes from our previous meetings.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Bailey to approve this evening's consent items, including the agenda, vouchers, and minutes from previous meetings. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Citizen comment. We have a time on our agenda where any member of the audience could address the City Council on anything that's either on tonight's agenda or not. We'd ask that you come up and give us your name and address for the record. We'd give you 3 minutes or so. Seeing no takers, we will move on to some presentations. We got some great presentations tonight. But before we get to the ones that are actually on your list, I think Linda has one regarding Municipal Clerks Week.
I do.
Would you mind reading that into the record?
I would love to. 50th anniversary of Municipal Clerks Week, May 5th to the 11th, 2019. Whereas the Office of the Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the Office of the Municipal Clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the Office of the Municipal Clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartially rendering equal service to all, whereas the municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the Office of the Municipal Clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state and international professional organizations, whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of the Municipal Clerk. Now, therefore, I, Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor of the City of Wenatchee, do recognize the week of May 5th through May 11th, 2019 as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our Municipal Clerk and Deputy Clerk, Tammy Stanger and Anna Grafe, and to all municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Dated this 9th day of May, 2019, Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Harold. Where are the girls?
Oh. Anna can't take a picture on this one.
Who's going to take the picture of?
Okay. No, we're gonna take a selfie.
Oh, selfie?
Oh, thank you. Oh, you can take.
There's a picture of 4 of us in the picture, you know.
Okay, selfie.
I wanted to photobomb.
A round of applause for our city. Did you know if we put that on the agenda, they would have known about it and complained about it and said they didn't want it. So we had to do a sneaky on them, so. All right, next up, Arts Month proclamation. Who's got that one?
I have that one.
Councilmember Esparza.
Okay. Whereas the arts, including dance, music, theater, and visual arts, are a core content area in Washington State's definition of basic education and are considered an essential component of a complete education that should be provided for all students. And whereas learning through the arts enables students to develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills, imagination and creativity, discipline, alternative ways to communicate and express feelings and ideas, and cross-cultural understanding, which supports academic success across the curriculum, as well as personal growth outside the classroom. And whereas imagination and creativity are increasingly understood as critical capacities needed for success in the 21st century workforce, and whereas the arts can transform schools into havens of creativity and exploration, places where students want to learn, teachers want to teach, and all members of the learning community are more engaged and motivated. And whereas we applaud the efforts and dedication of the art educators and advocates in the community, and we call for school and community leaders to continue to broaden and strengthen the commitment to provide art education for everyone. Now therefore, I, Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor of the City of Wenatchee, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2019 as Arts Education Month in the City of Wenatchee, and I urge all citizens to join us in this special observance. In witness whereof, I hereby set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Wenatchee to be affixed on this 9th day of May 2019. Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Esparza. Dan Longauger, you coming up and getting this one on behalf of the Arts Commission? Arts Rec Commission? Recreation Arts. Exactly. Sorry, sir. Honor taking a picture? Thanks, Dan. And since we're talking about arts, if you haven't seen Newsies yet, you need to go. That was amazing. I went last night. That was quite a production. Water Safety Month proclamation. Who's got that one?
I do.
All right, Councilmember.
A proclamation of the City of Wenatchee, Washington. Whereas swimming and aquatic-related activities play a vital role in good physical and mental health and enhanced quality of life, and whereas there are a variety of aquatic facilities and programs in the community that are available to residents, ranging from swimming areas on Columbia River to public and private swimming pools, and whereas the city provides aquatic programs and activity for participants to increase personal safety, learn life skills, and build self-esteem, confidence, and a sense of self-worth, which contributes to the quality of life in our community, and whereas through these aquatic programs and facilities, it is vitally important to communicate information about water safety to families and individuals of all ages, as water safety education helps to prevent drownings and recreational water-related injuries. Now, therefore, I, Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor of the City of Wenatchee, do hereby proclaim May 2019 as Water Safety Month in the City of Wenatchee and encourage all residents to join me in this special observance. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the Great Seal of the City of Wenatchee to be affixed on the 9th of May 2019. Frank Kuntz, Mayor.
Councilmember Markart, thank you. Gina, come on up. You guys get to meet our new rec coordinator, Gina Shaw. Sure you're. Hi. How are you?
Hi.
Come on up.
Thank you. Oh, gosh.
Thanks, Gina. Thanks for being here. Walking right by here. It's skinny.
You're getting a workout.
I am.
Yeah. Not done either.
All right, so next is Public Works Week proclamation. Who's got that one?
And I have that one,
Councilmember
Your Honor.
Bailey?
Then the slogan for National Public Works Week is "It Starts Here." Whereas Public Works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the City of Wenatchee. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for citizens, civic leaders, and children of the City of Wenatchee to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest an understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2019 marks the 59th Annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association / Canada Public Works Association, be it now resolved, Mayor Frank J. Kuntz, do hereby designate the week of May 19th to the 25th, 2019 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and Canadian Public Works Association and government agencies and activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contribution that they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness whereof, I have caused the seal of the City of Wenatchee to be affixed on this 9th day of May, 2019. Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Bailey. Rob Jammerman, you going to come up and get this? Get your picture on Facebook? All of them? Come on.
And all of them.
Rob said, I'm not gonna do this by myself. You guys get up here.
Okay, ready? 5 more. Perfect.
All right, thanks, Anna. Thanks, guys. I'll give that to you. We got the barbecue coming up when, Rob?
Yeah, May 22nd at the Public Service Center is our Public Works barbecue. So as you're welcome, I think we'll be barbecue, hot dogs and hamburgers. And
Good. There's a fee if East Wenatchee shows up, $5. $5. Yeah. All right, so we got, we're done with our sort of presentations. Now we're going to hear from our friends at the museum, Kenny Sturgeon, and then we're going to follow up with a presentation from Link. So, Kenny, come on up.
Thank you, Frank. I hadn't realized there was going to be so many photo ops, or I would have figured out how to do that a little bit better where I get my photo taken too, but okay. So I last spoke with council in December, shortly after I got here, and one of my goals with both the City of Wenatchee and East Wenatchee is to be more transparent and a little bit more open with what the museum's doing, what we've been working on, and where we're going. So my plan is to come talk with you and just share what we're working on quarterly. Please feel free at the end of my presentation to ask any questions, or if you're not hearing information that you want to hear, which I may not know off the top of my head, but please feel free to ask me, and I'm happy to include that in any future presentations that I make. You can also just call or email me if you come up with something later and let me know. So I'm here to talk to you just a little bit about what the museum's been doing in Q1, and kind of was a sneak peek when I put this together, but no longer what we're working on this quarter right now. And there's a lot of information on the slides. I'm not going to read it all to you. I'm just going to show some highlights and talk about a few things that we've been working on that we're particularly proud of, my staff and myself. On February 1st, we closed the exhibit Beyond the Frame, which featured the photography of Edward Curtis. This exhibit for us overall was a success in visitation, in content, and in programming quality. And we've actually going to be honored by the Washington State Museum Association with their annual Award of Excellence in Exhibition this June at their annual conference. So our curator will be going to pick that up for us and talk about the exhibit. So we're pretty pleased. It's also currently starting to travel around the area. I believe it's up in the Methow Valley right now, and parts of it are going to be going to different areas all around the Wenatchee Valley as we can figure out space and who would like it to come. We've had a lot of interest. The 40th Annual High School Art Show opened Friday, March 1st and closed on April 6th, and then the award winners from that show went to Olympia for their annual judging out there. Some of the programs that we are particularly thrilled to have offered and been a part of this year: the annual MLK Multicultural Fest on January 19th, which is a free community event. I know that Frank was there, Allison was there. We had more than 600 guests and participants between 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, and it was an amazing array of all the cultural diversity that we have in our valley through a wide variety of performance and some tabling exhibits. Our environmental film and lecture series, we had 7 programs in those 3 months and reached nearly 500 people with them. And we also, in our makerspace, our coordinator decided to pilot a new series of adult workshops in our makerspace. Mostly we work with kids and robotics clubs. We called it Get Lit, already named before I got there, but it seems pretty popular, so we're keeping it. We had 56 participants in 4 workshops, which doesn't sound pretty amazing, but we actually only scheduled 2 workshops. We did one on making Christmas cards that light up. They also want to do one on stained glass, and the stained glass one sold out in one day. And so we opened another one, and it sold out in 2 hours. I had no idea. So we opened a third one, it also sold out. So we may just do stained glass for like the rest of our life at the museum, because evidently learning how to make it is very, very popular. We had our annual special event during March, on March 23rd, which is Night at the Museum. And we had over 300 people both in attendance and supporting us at the museum through participating with food and beverages and performance. I know that a number of you were there, and I just want to thank you all for your support in being at this event. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time. I had never seen it before, so I take no credit in how it went, but it seemed to be a lot of fun. So what are we working on right now? Our featured exhibit, Blossom Days Remembered, just opened on May 3rd, and it runs through September 7th. And as you might imagine from the title, it's a celebration of the centennial of the Washington State Apple Blossom Festival. I also had the pleasure of experiencing apple blossom for the first time, and had a wonderful time. Saw Linda a lot at the Grand Parade, because I think I was right behind your photographing plan over there. So,
I'm sorry.
You're so busy, so I didn't want to say hi, because it was fantastic. Some of the programs we have coming up and are working on, our Youth on the Columbia School program started on May 1st and runs through June 7th, which should reach more than 1,000 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders at the museum, out at the Huron Natural Area, and then out on the Columbia River and the Wenatchee with the Row and Paddle Club. Science Fest is on May 18th, and it features a variety of space science exhibits that one of our coordinators managed to secure from NASA. For those of you, most people know this, but it is the 50th anniversary of the lunar landing this year in July. The day they came back from the moon is my birthday, so I won't be around to celebrate that, but it's easy to remember for me. And then we also have a variety of other science folks coming to share science, and we are working to there was a science festival of young children and their science projects that was judged down at Pybus Market earlier this year, and several of them are planning to come and share their science projects with us at the museum, which would be a lot of fun. Also this quarter, we're starting some strategic planning. The last time the museum had a new strategic plan was 2009, when we were still a department of the city. So it's probably time. There's been a little bit of change, as those of you know. So we're really looking forward to that. And this quarter, we're going to be working on reviewing our mission and vision statement and setting some of our values and guiding principles before we go into a lot of community-based strategic planning in the fall. We've begun talking with Trent up at the airport about putting in some potential exhibits up there that will both help people who come to Wenatchee know we have a museum, and also give them ideas for things that they could explore in the area. So we're looking at recreation, looking at agriculture, and obviously the Miss Vidal and the Pangborn flight. So we've just started that conversation with them a couple weeks ago. And finally, we've been working since the beginning of the year and continue to work with Randy Lewis, Wenatchee Elder. He is working with us to document some Native history of and stories about the Huron Natural Area, as well as the confluence as a gathering space. And so he continues to work with us doing public programs. He's going to be sharing some of his stories, which will come out in one of the confluence editions, either the next one coming out in September or a little bit later in the year. So that's mostly what my team has been up to the last 6 months. I guess I've been here 6 months actually, next week. So I'd be happy to take any questions. If there's anything, again, you would like to see that you didn't hear about, I would be more than happy to include that next time I come.
Kenny, your apple blossom display, I got to see it Sunday night when I was there for the Masawa dinner, and it was absolutely beautiful. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you.
And I'm really glad you're here. I just want to say that because I just think you're such an asset to that museum and to our community, and so I thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I really appreciate that, and I'll share that with the curators who put it together.
They do an excellent job down
the
there.
2 white dresses, those are beautiful.
Was
And I'm not a dress person, but those are gorgeous. So,
And then I will mention this, we met with Kenny, Allison and I did, regarding their contract is up this year, so we went through the portion, so you'll be seeing a renewal of some form, I'd guess in the next 3 or 4 months, probably ahead of our budget time. They've had a flat rate paid for us So we've upped that a little bit and put a little cost of living adjustment into it. And then we'll send it over to East Wenatchee, who sort of matches that on a per capita basis, sort of see where that goes. But Kenny's doing remarkable, and every now and again, it's time to give him a little extra money and keep that thing going. So I think you'll see something hopefully soon.
Great, thank
Yeah,
you.
Steve?
Hey, Kenny, I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in. We, as everyone knows, our grand marshals from Auckland, New Zealand were here, and one of your employees went out of their way to give them a tour of part of the museum. They were running out of time hours-wise, but showed them the apple sizer and some of the label room, and they were just thrilled. They just couldn't stop talking about it. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, Steve?
I just wanted to thank Kenny and the museum too. The council budgeted last year for some of money to work on the cultural heritage and history, which you mentioned with Randy Lewis. And to be able to do that through the museum and working with the museum has just been amazing and the right way to do it. So thank you, Kenny.
Yeah, that's part of our NEPA process for Confluence Parkway because it goes to the cultural areas. So we're using the museum and Randy as an asset to help work through the cultural issues. So, all right, anything else for Kenny? Great, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
And last but not least, our friends from Link Transit, Richard DeRock, and I see that Chuck Johnson is there. And as you may know, they are going to the voters for a sales tax increase to add service to the Link Transit system. So I'm assuming we'll hear a little bit about that. So I'll turn over to Richard and Councilman Johnson, I guess is the right term to use in a public meeting like this. So
He wanted somebody from East Wenatchee, Mayor, so I volunteered.
okay.
Okay. Well, good evening. And as Mayor mentioned, we're here to give you an updated bit on Link Transit and our proposal to increase sales taxes to expand Link Transit services quite a bit. Let me give you a quick history just to set the stage of where we're going from. So Link was originally established through a citizen effort back in 1989. There was a request to create a public transportation benefit area, which is the legal structure that Link is. The county commissions in both Douglas and Chelan County agreed to that, and that original board put a 4/10 sales tax on the ballot in 1990, which was passed in November 1990. That 4/10 sales tax was then matched 80 cents on the dollar by the state to fund the original operation of the Link system. Link was originally and still continues, our motto is connecting our communities. It was intended to provide a way to connect the communities throughout Chelan and Douglas County together, provide access for basic life issues, and it was really focused on what I call lifeline services for people who don't have choices, services that provide basic work and school access, access for the disabled, and to a great degree, that's a reason that public transit exists in smaller communities is to meet those needs. And they're not insignificant. 34% of the population doesn't have a driver's license, and that's the reason we do public transportation. In 1999, the citizens of the state passed I-695, which repealed the motor vehicle excise tax. That was the source of funds for the state match. That took away 45% of our revenue. The Link board in that time said the voters here overwhelmingly supported that. They knew it would impact public transportation, and so they cut service 45%. That cut was truly devastating to the system. In 1999, we carried 1.7 million passengers. In 2002, our low point, we carried 500,000. We lost, by almost a factor of 2/3, lost ridership in the system. In 2002 was the year I was recruited to come to Link, and the board gave me a challenge at that time, which was try to rebuild the system, try to get back to a level of service that approximates what was out there, do what we could. And realistically, we've done that. We are now operating 80% of the system we had in 1999. We're carrying 1 million passengers a year, so we've doubled our ridership. We've had about a 40% increase in hours. We've done that through using grants. We've done it through efficiencies. Our cost per hour has actually gone down as we move the system forward. And so a lot of very positive things to move the system going forward. One of the messages that back in 2015, I approached the Link board and said, okay, we've achieved what you asked us to do. What's the vision for the future? We've rebuilt the system. We've got a financial stability. We can operate the system we have today for at least the next 10, if not 20 years with the revenue stream we have. But it's still 80% of what it was in 1999. The population of our service area has gone up 36% in that period of time. So we're operating less service than we did 20 years ago, and we've got 30%, and we're not serving areas that have grown since then, and we also have less service than we had then. And the direction was given was go out to the community, find out what they're interested in, and are they willing to support additional revenue, because that's really the only way to expand service with the system we have. I'm going to skip this slide. It's a little video that many of you may have probably seen. So service area. Our service area is 3,500 square miles, and I call Link the bipolar transit system. We're the largest rural system in the state, and we're the smallest urban system in the state. And so we have to serve both those needs, and those are very different depending on how you operate. We have 10 urbanized areas we serve. We have 550 miles of routes, 600 bus stops. The buses travel about 2.2 million miles a year, again, about 1 million passengers, about 17 million passenger miles. So that's the number of miles each individual passenger travels in a year. These last couple of bullets are fairly important. 40% of our population lives within a quarter mile of one of our bus stops. That's an important number because a quarter mile is what the planners tell us that a person is willing to walk to a bus stop that has a choice. So if you want to get someone to ride transit that has a car, that has choices, quarter mile is about the maximum they'll walk to a bus stop. Only 40% of our population lives within a quarter mile. 58% of our population lives within 3/4 of a mile of a bus stop. That's important because 3/4 of a mile is a distance planners tell us that a person will walk to a bus stop if they're disabled or they don't have choices, that really have no other way of getting around. They'll walk a little further. So at best, we're serving about 60% of the population, and mainly that's because we have not changed our system in almost 20 years. If you look at a route map from 1991, it is almost identical to the map we have today, even though Rancher Heights wasn't developed in those days. There was no development east of Kentucky on the eastern Wenatchee side. The foothills here were orchards, and there wasn't many houses up in those areas. And so, if anything, it's a little smaller than it was at that time. Additionally, service runs Monday through Saturday. Monday through Friday is pretty decent service. Saturday is a fraction of Monday through Friday. We operate 20%, 25% of what we operate Monday through Fridays on Saturdays. And just as an example, on a weekday, we do 23 round trips to Leavenworth. On a Saturday, we do 5. We don't operate service at all in most of East Wenatchee on Saturdays. We don't operate service in Waterville or Rock Island on Saturdays. Obviously, we just haven't been able to afford to put that back. And we've never operated Sundays. Performance. Well, the most common thing I hear, and I'm sure most of you have heard at times, is why would we want to do transit when the buses are always empty? Our buses aren't actually empty. We move, on average, system-wide, including our rural routes, 13 passengers an hour. So for every hour a bus is in service, we move 13 people. That's low for a major urban area. King County Metro averages 38 passengers an hour, so quite a bit less. But for a rural system, 13 is quite reasonable. More importantly is there's Congress in 2012 recognized that the small urban systems in this country, and that's what we're legally classified as, don't benefit from the federal program the way that large urban areas do. And a number of us petitioned Congress saying, we perform as well as the larger urban systems, we should get rewarded for that. And they went out, did a study, and came back and said, yeah, you're right. And so they adopted an incentive program that for small urban systems that operate at least at the average of the large urban systems. Large urban areas above 200,000 population. And that's measured on passengers per mile, revenue miles per passenger mile, a bunch of efficiency measures, 6 efficiency measures. Link is one of 11 systems out of 337 nationwide that achieves all 6 of the performance measures. And so we actually operate at a very high efficiency for a small urban system. And then our cost is about 25% less per hour than the statewide average. Our revenue is 76% sales tax. That 4/10 sales tax has not been adjusted since 1990. That makes up the vast majority of our income. Grants, about 20% of our budget. Fares make up about 3.5% of our total budget. That's not what you count as operations. That includes capital reserves. We have a lot of expensive buses that we have to replace, so we have to put about $2 million a year aside to buy buses. So fares cover about 5% of the total operating budget, about 7% of what the fixed route system. Paratransit is very heavily subsidized. We are a very labor-intensive business. Every bus has a driver, and then you have to have mechanics and service workers. We have 600 bus stops. We have 450 garbage cans to empty and snow plowing of lots of facilities. And so there's a fairly significant investment to keep those things going as well. Who are the riders in the system? Well, 50% of our riders have been riding for 2 or more years, 18% for 10 or more years. And that may seem a little low, but actually what you find in transit across the country is transit serves as a transitional bridge for people who are moving up the income stream. They ride transit when they're lower income, when they're going to school, when they're doing entry-level jobs. And once income is moved, they tend to buy a car and move off the system. So we're constantly turning ridership over. And that's normal in transit. That's sort of what our job is moving people off of welfare, moving off of dependency to independence. 55% of our riders ride to work, 25% to school. That's actually higher than I expected. This was off of this year passenger survey we'd done. I mean, the common perception is we carry elderly and disabled and homeless people. The reality is 80% of our riders are accessing work or school. 32% would have driven themselves if transit was not available. So we do have a fairly significant discretionary market. For the most part, that's our long-distance commuter routes, Leavenworth and Chelan. We move over 1,000 people a day out of those two communities into the Wenatchee area that commute down on those routes. 17% reported they would not have traveled if transit wasn't available. And you say, well, wait a second, 32% would have driven if would driven themselves. Why was only 17%? Well, this is the population that has no other choice. Most people that don't have choices have family. They have someone who could help them out. 70% of our riders tell us we are their sole form of transportation. If we weren't here, they would not leave their homes. 48% are employed full-time, 23% are students, 32% over the age of 45, 53% 34 or younger, and then 53% male and 47% female, which is actually the opposite of most transit systems in the country. Environmental footprint. Not a lot of people know that we are actually sort of leading the game in alternative fuels. We have the largest alternative fuel transit fleet in the Northwest. Over 70% of our equipment is alternatively fueled, 42 propane-powered vehicles in our fleet. Actually really nice environmental benefits out of that, 16% reduction in greenhouse gases, 99% in other pollutants. And really the winner on this is it costs 65% less than running gasoline or diesel fuel. And in fact, we pay 85 cents a gallon for propane. There's a 50-cent tax credit on that, which means we're fueling our vehicles for 30 cents a gallon. That's an incredible deal, and it makes engines last longer. So it's a real win all around. We have 2 battery electric buses in service today. We have 10 that will be here by February. That's been an interesting challenge for the last 9 years. So we thought we were doing cutting edge and ended up being bleeding edge for quite a while. But the last 6 or 7 months have been exceptionally positive. We've had almost no breakdowns, and the breakdowns we had have been not related to technology, wheelchair, lift, and door. But the biggest part is we actually are now starting to see the benefit of electric vehicles. It's cost half the cost of running an electric vehicle than it does to run a diesel vehicle. So our diesels cost us about 65 cents a mile to run. Our electric vehicles are 38 cents a mile to run. So that's a significant savings there. Then we have the first wireless charger in the world, 200 kilowatt charger that has actually been completely trouble-free since we've had it. And Mayor came down and joined us in a video the BBC is putting together on technologies and cities that are changing the world. It's actually going to be released in Europe next week. And then we've also invested a lot in LED lights, high-efficiency cooling, water recycling. And all these things are investments that do environmental footprint, but they also save us money. Every one of them has been done as an investment in being more efficient as well as being more clean and green. The community outreach process we did was called Think Link. We actually reached out to every household in our service area. We mailed over 45,000 surveys out to the community, and we actually did it in 2 phases. We did it out in 2016. We went out and asked people what they wanted. Went back, took those responses, looked at what those things would cost, and then went back in 2017 and said, okay, this is what you told us you wanted. What are you willing to pay for? Because there's no money to pay for this other than doing this. And what we got out of that is what our proposal essentially is. This graphic, based on the size, tells you what people were asking for. Sunday service was number one. 83% said they wanted Sunday service and were willing to pay for it. More convenient, which really means more frequent service, was second highest at 82. Better Saturday service was at 81%, so very high. And then everything else was a little lower than that. But what we picked up through the comments in this, and we had 4,500 responses to our survey work, so actually a very good response for our community, was that there was a real desire for us to expand our system to cover second shifts, to cover third shifts, and to cover weekends. That we do a great job in serving education. We do a great job serving government and Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 workers. We provide good access for those jobs. We don't provide any access to a second shift because our service stops at 7 o'clock at night, starts at 6 o'clock in the morning. That doesn't cover a second shift, doesn't cover a third shift. We don't operate on Sundays at all, and we start at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays, and we end by 5 on Saturdays. We don't cover the weekends. And the biggest parts of our economy now are hospitality, in tourism, and in agriculture, and we don't serve those markets well at all. And people were saying that's what they wanted. And in fact, the non-riders, people, over half our responses were from people who said they identified as non-riders, were actually asking for those services. And what they said was, we would use it if you you made it available, but we can't use what you provide today. This very busy graphic, and I'm not going to go through this in any detail, but it really is to show sort of where we are in the spectrum. The red line sort of identifies us. And what this was attempting to do was to describe the different types of transit service you see in different areas. Down below on this, there's a list of the transit systems sort of operate in those areas, and you'll see from rural systems to more urban systems. We call ourselves an enhanced lifeline. We really focus on the lifeline type services, but we have a commuter service that carries a significant number of people. We operate a bit later. We operate some Saturday service. That puts us in that range. What the community told us they wanted was to be here at the high end of the minimal comprehensive to more comprehensive service, something in the range of 4 trips an hour, so a bus every 15 minutes on major routes, service later in the evening, be able to cover those second and third shifts. Maybe not every 15 minutes, but coverage or van pool, worker-driver vans, things that can meet those needs of the agriculture employers and the hospitality employers, cover those needs out there. I'm going to, well, this doesn't take much time. Nope, not going to play, so don't worry about it. Come on.
Now you're stuck.
Yeah, looks like it. Let me see, I'll just move on. I only have a bit more.
And I love you, Wenatchee, I'm sure that you
So, well, the last page on this was, which all I had left, was pretty straightforward. So what would it cost to expand the service? What we're talking about is about a 38% expansion in service. It's very significant in terms of what would be actually provided. And it works out based on what the community told us, work back up. To do that would cost us about $5.5 million a year. To generate $5.5 million, it takes a 2/10 sales tax. A 2/10 sales tax will generate about $6 million a year. We have to do it in tenths, and sales tax is the only tax we're allowed to use under state law. So that's why we're proposing a sales tax increase to fund this, and that's where the amount comes from. It's purely driven off of the service. None of the money would go to pay for existing operations. We can fund that. We just can't grow the system. We can't expand it with the current revenues. What that means is a 2/10 sales tax, so it's 2 cents on a $10 purchase. It works out to about $24 per household per year in Chelan and Douglas County. And this is based on the tax data from this community, based on what people report as being sales, look it through. That works out to about $8.88 a person, or $2 a month for a household. So that's the proposal that's out on the table. It's on the ballot for August 6th. And let's see whether the community wants to expand service the way they said they did in the survey work we did. Chuck, did you want to?
Sure, I'd like to say a couple things too, if I might. Need to look at my notes because mine isn't, I'm going to go on the screen. My name's Chuck Johnson. I'm from the city of East Wenatchee, but I used to be here. I was on the city council, and your mayor, Frank Kuntz, replaced me when I left and moved to the light side on the other side. Isn't that right,
That's
Mayor?
correct, yep.
And I've always had a passion for some of these things, and I have one for transportation particularly, and I'll tell you why. There are some people in our community, I don't want to talk about the homeless, but I want to talk about those who have less than we have. And what do I know about that? I'm the oldest of 5 children. My dad was an aeronautical engineer. He left to go back to Pennsylvania for Boeing, and I told him, "You got 5 other kids. Don't send me any money. I'll make it on my own," which is a big mistake. And I made it on my own. But I can remember one time I lost a job, and I had school paid for, my rent paid for. I had no money for food. I borrowed from my friends until I was desperate. In fact, I went to one pay and save store 17 times. And the 17th time he said, "Well, I'll think about it." I said, "You told me that 17 times. I'll make you a deal. I'll work for you for a week, next week for free, if you give me an answer, yes or a no." He said, "I can't do that because of the unions." I said, "I don't care. I'll still do it." He said, "I'll hire you." I ate popcorn and drank water for a month because I didn't have any money. So I know what it's like. But my life isn't like that now, thank God. But I have some sense of what you feel when you're in that position. And I was too stubborn to ask my dad years later after I came back from Vietnam, and I told him that story. He was not happy with me. So I could have sent you someday, at least get by for a while. So I think that students are certainly important, whether it's high school students or college students. And those are in the low end of the spectrum, particularly the people who work a lot but don't make a lot of money, if we can help them, for God's sakes. Now, when I went to work for Pansave and I had my car stolen, so I didn't have a car, if I didn't have enough money to take a cab, I had to walk. It was 3 miles, sometimes in the rain, and that's a long way to walk in the rain. So, but anyway, I survived. What I'm looking for right now is some support from the Wenatchee City Council. People in the Wenatchee Valley, in my opinion, will support a legitimate cause. I ran a school levy for the Wenatchee School District in the 90s, passed by 70%. As your mayor knows, I worked very hard on the Town Toyota Center, along with Mayor Lacey. It wasn't our city, but I love this whole valley, and to the day I die, I will. And I didn't want to see your city struggle and have lots of problems. So we worked hard on that, and we convinced the public by 65%. That was no easy task, was it, Mayor? So, that's kind of my experience, giving you some ideas of what I've done and what I think I can do. Now, you have an opportunity here to lead. You have an opportunity to give us, those of us, by the way, I'm on this committee, Citizens for Better Transit is what we decided, and we just filed this week. So I'm already raising money for it. And fortunately, I've got some positive feedback so far. I know Frank's surprised that I'd ever raised money, but we're happy with that so far. So I want your help. What do I want you to do? My city had a discussion, and Link made the presentation, and I brought up the idea of a resolution, and the council agreed. So on our next meeting, it's the first Tuesday in June. I believe it's the 3rd of June. We're going to consider a resolution. And by the way, we did that for the Town Toyota Center. I don't know if Wenatchee did it or not, but if Wenatchee did, it was Wenatchee and us, and that was it, because I don't know of anybody else. And maybe it helped, maybe it didn't, but I'm sure it wasn't negative for us since we passed it. So, I've been where you are. This is my 24th year, 10 in Wenatchee, and this is my 14th year in East Wenatchee. And I know how people look up to you and they expect you to lead. Leadership is really important. It isn't just about talking, it's also about doing. Here's a lesson in Vietnam when I was a young lieutenant. We had a guy in his 5-ton tractor and his 5,000-gallon tanker disappeared. 11 o'clock at night, I had to go find him. I called headquarters and said, "Can I have artillery or gunship support?" "Nope, we're in a big firefight. You're absolutely on your own." I got all my guys together, about 50 of them, and said, "Here's the situation. This is a real bad, because we're expecting trouble, bad situation. I'm not telling anybody to go. I'm asking for volunteers." And guess what the first question was? "Are you going to go?" I said, "I'm going to lead it." I had all the volunteers I needed. It isn't what you say, it's important what you do. So I'm asking you, if you believe, as I do, this is important for the community, that you step up and voice that support. That'll help us a lot. Have any questions of me or?
Any questions for Richard or Chuck? I know this isn't new to any of our council members, so we've known about it for a while. And I think what we'll do is we'll bring it back for their discussion. We won't discuss tonight whether we would adopt a supportive resolution or not, but we'll bring it back at our next meeting and
Thank you.
have discussion about
Thanks
it
for
as we
even
monitor
talking
that.
about it.
So
Thank you.
Just so this brochure is just sort of lays out what the projects are and the timelines. I didn't mention that in the presentation. There's a map on the back that lays out what each city would be looking at, as well as a time frame. And then the last piece is it's 2/10 sales tax, but it's phased implementation. What we're asking for and what the ballot measure would be for 1/10 immediately, second 10th 2 years later, and that's because we don't need the money that fast. We can't buy buses and hire drivers fast enough to spend it if we got it all at once. So we said, why impose it all at once? Let's spread it out over time. It's needed.
which makes sense. All right, thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start with some action items and maybe take a break in 20 minutes or so. So first action item is regarding inmate labor. David, you got that one?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, Dave Erickson, Parks and Recreation Director. First, I've got 3 items tonight. The first one is a agreement between the city and Chelan County Regional Justice Center for the use of inmate labor. For a number of years, we've used inmate laborers for everything from picking up trash in the parks to weed eating to bush mowing, all that fun stuff. 2010, the county started charging $1 an hour for the use of the inmates. And so we had an agreement with them for that. About a month ago, we got a notice from the jail saying that they were going to increase the rates to $5 an hour for each inmate. And so they provided us with a new agreement, which you guys have in your packet. And so we took a look at several different options, everything from, because that's a 400% increase in the rates, everything from eliminating the use of the inmate laborers to utilizing them as we had budgeted this year, or increasing the budget to address that increase in fees. And we brought that to the Finance Committee 2 meetings ago. And kind of the consensus of the committee at that time was to just utilize it as we currently had it budgeted. So that equates to about a little over 1,000 hours of inmate labor for the rest of this year. And then revisit it again next year as a budget item to move forward. And so that was the recommendation by the committee, is to sign the agreement and then just limit our hours to about 1,000 hours to keep it within our kind of budgeted range.
So in the past, we'd pay $1 an hour, and that went to the county to operate the program. And the county is saying that now it's going to go to $5. So instead of using them for X amount of hours, we're just going to cut our usage by the number of hours to make it so the budget's the same.
Right.
It's a little bit too bad, because I like having the program and having the guys out working, but we also have a budget to balance.
Yeah, the difference in rates from, if we were to go just paying the $5 an hour based on what the number of hours we've used, it'd be about a $21,000 impact in this year's budget. So by reducing the hours, keeping the rate as their increase rate, then it gives us about 1,000 hours to work with.
Is this going to have a huge impact on your ability to perform in your department?
Yeah, you know, it's sad to say, but we do rely on their labor for everything, like I say, from snow shoveling. We saw it a lot in February this year. We didn't have any inmate labor at that time. And so rather than having inmates be able to out and shovel some of these hand areas, then our crews had to do that, which then put them behind in the other areas that they would normally do. Same thing with, say, picking up trash in the parks. So we would send the inmates out to pick up the trash while our guys are mowing or doing something like that. Now our guys are going to have to pick up the trash as well as do the mowing. So,
and I think the hope would be, I think we clearly expect some sort of increase in daily rates from the jail for next year. And if we're going to accept the higher rates, we ought to try to get this down to a point where it's either a throw-in or a small cost, so we can continue to use the inmate laborers. It's good for us, it's good for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of the hope. I think in the interim, the idea was, we'll just cut the hours. I've talked to other organizations who use the inmate laborers, and they've just cut the hours. So we have a budget for it, and we're just going to cut hours and do it some other way.
My question is, if we're not using the inmate labor, doesn't that increase our overtime expenses, and is that not going to put more pressure on getting temp workers this summer? I'm just thinking that cost is going to end up going somewhere else if we don't have them. Can you speak to that, David?
Yeah, we've already seen that with the February snows. We had a lot more overtime this year than I think we have had in years past. So our budget is going to be definitely impacted, at least early on. So far this spring, we just haven't gotten to things as quickly. So you're seeing shaggier parks at this point because we're behind in a variety of things. So it does put a stress on that. Temporary workers, we typically have a hard time getting temporary workers for whatever reason the last several years. And that situation hasn't changed at all.
How long is this agreement for?
So it just seems to me that at $5 an hour, it's still a pretty good deal for us. I mean, probably don't get as much work out of as we do a normal city worker, but the cost difference between the city worker, especially if they have to do the overtime, and an inmate worker, plus just the added stress we're putting on the city workers that we don't want to do. I'm kind of in favor for figuring out a way to keep them working.
And Mike, it's the agreement's until we cancel it.
Okay.
Yeah, but our thought is we'll look at, I mean, they didn't give us this wasn't negotiable, right? They didn't say, hey, we want to negotiate inmate. They just said that it goes from $1 to $5. There wasn't even any discussion about negotiating or let's talk about anything more. So when we deal with the jail contract, we'll then deal with that and see if we can get it changed.
So we can look at this budget next year.
Well, I think that
and
my thought would
determine-
be we'd get through the summer, get through it, see how we did, and see what the conditions of the parks are and how we did. And if you guys go, that wasn't acceptable, then we'll have to figure out something else for next year in terms of how we look at it.
To Keith's point, though, maybe increasing more.
I think the idea would be, if this is clearly not working for us, we get through the summer and this didn't work, and we had more overtime and we couldn't manage it very well, then I would look at you guys and say, next year, let's put an extra, 20 or 30 grand in the budget and get them back to going again and make it part of it's just hard to do it midstream when you can't negotiate. You're just sort of like, well, let's just use the budget that we have. So again, and Keith, we can hire more people tomorrow if we want. We'll just have to get a budget amendment. There's nothing in here. It's just the policy is we're going to use up our budget and stop. If we use up our budget and you guys say keep going, then we'll keep going. I don't think it affects our ability.
I guess with that option, if we use up the budget and we can see a definite need for it, as long as we have the way to keep going, I think we're okay.
Yeah, well, there's nothing against us using them as much as we want.
No, it's up to us.
Okay.
And then according to jail, just the availability of inmates.
Well, Mayor, I'm going to make a motion for the city council to approve the agreement between Chelan County Regional Justice Center and the city of Wenatchee as presented.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Poyer, second by Councilmember Harold, to approve the agreement between Chelan County Regional Justice Center and the city of Wenatchee regarding the use of inmate workers. Discussion?
Yeah, David, first of all, I really like the idea of having the inmates doing work. Did you have any advance notice that this was coming down the pipeline, or was it just you open the mail one day and here it is?
Yeah, I got an email actually from the finance department. They sent this revised agreement. Actually, it was fun because they sent it to the city Wenatchee thrift store. And that I think went to finance and Brad generously gave it to me, said, here, you're now the thrift store director and you might be interested in doing this agreement. But no, we had no pre-warning for this at all. And then we sent back changes and suggestions for implementation of this over a phased time, like keep 2019 as it is, as budgeted, then next year increase it to 250 and then the following year 5 to step it up. They weren't interested in any of that at all. They did take the thrift store part out, so.
The only thing we can negotiate is how much we use them.
Yeah.
Right? That's the only thing that we control.
Right.
They control all the rest.
Yeah, I guess just that process bothers me. to start with. And I guess, and then the letter that was sent to you from Nicole Thompson at the county, the comment there about availability and those kinds of things. I guess my initial kind of gut reaction is it worth all the hassle? It's a good program, and I think it's worth doing, but at some level, is it more trouble than it's worth?
You know, once we get them out there, it's fine, and the workers we're able to get quite a lot of work out of them. So from that regard, definitely. You know, it's cheaper. They can't do quite the same things that a temporary worker can do, or a full-time worker for that matter, as far as equipment they can operate and things they can do that way. But it does definitely provide a service for us.
Yeah, I think it's a positive thing having the workers get out there, out of the jail for a while.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions? So we do have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
David, another license for the community center.
Yeah, so maybe a month and a half ago, something like that, we brought all of those license agreements for the use of the community center to you guys. The one kind of outlier was community choice, and they did approve you guys did approve the amendment to their agreement, which basically changed community action to the city, but they weren't interested at that time as far as extending the term date through the end of 2020. Because they're going to move somewhere else. They said they're out of space. Well, their out of space option has fallen through, and so now they would like to extend their lease agreement through 2020.
Wow. Okay.
So you have a new agreement in front of you that just essentially extends the end date from the end of this year to the end of next year. And that marries up all the license agreements to expire at the end of next year.
Perfect. Any questions for David? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Well, Your Honor, I would make a motion for the City Council to approve the license agreement between the City of Wenatchee and Community Choice for the use of the Wenatchee Community Center and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Markart, to approve the license agreement between the City of Wenatchee and Community Choice for the use of the community center. Authorize the mayor to sign. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Third item, David?
Yep, last item. So 2018, the city accepted a grant, about $900,000 from the Department of Ecology to do the Saddle Rock, first phase of the Saddle Rock remediation project. Interesting thing about that grant agreement is the state was so slow about getting the grant agreement to us. It was nearly half over by the time that we were able to accept it because of the state budget process. However, they didn't change the end date, so they had to try to compress everything into this shorter time period. So we would like to actually be able to finish the project. And so the state has actually given us a amendment to the grant to extend the end date out to the end of 2021. So that allows us the time to wrap up that first phase of the project, which is scheduled for construction at the end of this year. So it's moving along great. Engineering is going real well on that project. So really the only thing in this amendment, everything else is the same. It's just changing the end date.
You're good at changing end dates.
We're getting a lot of practice here lately.
Sure. All right, any questions for David? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move for City Council to authorize the mayor to sign Amendment Number 1 to Agreement Number TCPRA-2018-Wenatch-00035 between the State of Washington Department of Ecology and City of Wenatchee for the Gold Knob Prospect Site.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Harold, second by Councilmember Esparza to authorize the mayor to sign Amendment Number 1 with the agreement from the Department of Ecology for the Gold Knob Prospect Site. Discussion?
David, is the phase 2 thing, do we have the grant and everything for that one to move in there, or is this something that's going to be ways down the line?
Yeah, so actually I checked on that yesterday because we applied for that grant last year and the year before, I think, to see if it was incorporated into the state budget. this year. And I did see money in the Matka Fund, which is where this is, but they didn't have it broken out by specific projects. According to Ecology, it sounds like we are very likely to receive that funding, which was another $1.2 million to do phase 2.
Okay.
So ideally, if phase 2 comes in, we'd be wrapping up the entire project by the end of 2021, 2022 in that timeframe.
Okay, good, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
You guys want a break or keep going? Got Brad for 2?
Let's roll.
Okay, Brad. We'll do 2 more, then we'll take a break. These financing ones are pretty exciting. Debits and credits and yeah, amortization and.
I thought you were going to say they needed to take a break so that they could get some caffeine. So Mayor, Council, Brad Posenjack, Finance Director. I've got a resolution, 2019-19. We invest our cash reserves in the local government investment pool with the Washington State Treasurer's Office, and we have to move our funds between the LGIP and our bank account that we write checks off of. To do this, we have to have a special authorization form filled out with the State Treasurer's Office, and apparently they wanted us to update this form, and when I went to update it, they told me that I didn't have authority because the authority to update that form was specifically spelled out in the name of our prior finance director. And that was done in resolution in 2014. So this is basically just a cleanup resolution replacing all the language is pretty much the exact same as in 2014. The only difference is that instead of, let's see, I think on the second page of the resolution, instead of designating a specific name as a finance director, it leaves it just finance director so that when you get rid of me in a couple years, you won't have to update this resolution.
Finance director and people you assign, isn't that?
Well, the finance director is the only one that has the authority to sign this authorization form that I can list a couple other names on. So currently I don't have the authority to list my assistant finance director as somebody who can also transfer funds.
I'm going to make a motion for the city council to approve resolution number 2019-19, authorizing investment of city of Wenatchee monies in the local government investment pool.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Poyer, second by Councilmember Harold to approve resolution 2019-19, authorizing investment of city of Wenatchee monies in the local government investment pool and giving the finance director the authority to do so on behalf of the city. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And now we've got a little code change or policy change here?
Yeah, I've got an ordinance 2019-17. This is much more exciting. So Chapter 1.20 of the Wenatchee City Code, it defines the purpose of several funds that the city is supposed to be using. It also has a few financial procedures in there. Many of these sections have not been updated since 1900, 1917, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. So needless to say that accounting practices and the funds we use have changed in the last 50 to 100 years. So when I noticed this, I decided that it would be good to bring to you a resolution that would replace the old financial fund structure and some of the policies that have been already superseded with financial policy documents that we've adopted that were not around 50, 100 years ago. And then, we've got a whole matrix of funds that we are currently using, and then as we add or remove funds from time to time, we can just update the specific fund in here. The other main piece of this is that within this section, there is authorizing the dollar amount that we have in our advanced travel fund, and that's just increasing it from $10,000 to $15,000 because as we have gotten more employees and we value training at the city, we are sending more people out in training, and we've actually had a couple times in this past in the first quarter of 2019, we've had a couple times where we got real close to the $10,000 threshold because we advance funds to staff to be able to go and do their travel, and then we use this advanced travel fund to move the funds that way. Yeah, do you have any questions?
This did go through the finance committee, not at this meeting, but at the one previous,
Yes, or two previous.
two previous.
Brad, are the titles that in the resolution here, are these taken kind of from a generic list from the state treasurer's office or the auditor's office, or are these ones that
The
we?
fund titles are titles that we use at the city for our budget document, and even our financial statements. The fund numbers, they are prescribed by the state auditor's office. So they have a numbering system that we have to use. The general fund is basically always Fund 001, and so that title is somewhat set by the state auditor's office, but it's also what we use. But the rest of them, the rest of the funds, the numbers follow an accounting prescription that the state auditors have.
Okay. Now, also, there's a thing in there about impressed funds.
Yes, that includes.
It's
That
on
includes that.
page 39 of our packet.
Yep.
I guess I was just curious, this is kind of like petty cash
Yes. Yep.
things kind of thing, except
They're,
when they get to your department and the police detectives, it looks a bit more than
so
than petty cash.
I believe the ones in the finance office are tills. So we've got four.
Okay.
We've got four. We might have a fifth. I think we actually have 5 tills, even though we've got 4 desks there. I think we've got 5 tills, and they all have a certain amount of cash in them. And so I believe that is what makes up most of those.
Okay.
And I think the police. I don't know if that may be the drug buy money and for doing other different type of stings, or it's under the detectives. I don't know exactly what they use
conducting
that for.
operations thing that you need to do it on site. Okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions for Brad? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for the city council to adopt ordinance number 2019-17 relating to the financial policies of the city, and specifically amending and restating chapter 1.2 WWC funds special, and repealing chapter 1.40 WWC rental of city buildings.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Esparza, second by Councilmember Markart to adopt ordinance 2019-17 relating to financial policies of the city, specifically amending and restating chapter 1.200 Wenatchee City Code funds/special, and repealing chapter 1.40 Wenatchee City Code rental of city buildings. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, let's take a quick little 5-minute bathroom break, and we'll come back and start again. Let's go ahead and sort of keep going here. So
Bring this out.
next up is wastewater treatment plant snow melt and clarifier demolition project. John Riccardi, how are you, sir?
Very good, thank you. Mr. Mayor and City Council, thanks for your time this evening. And yeah, it's my second spring in Wenatchee, so I'm pretty impressed by the weather we get in the spring, so it's been good. So tonight I'm here to talk to you about the wastewater treatment plant snow melt and clarifier demolition project. We're seeking to demolish an abandoned snow melt facility and clarifier located on Worthen Street, just across from the wastewater treatment plant. The project will consist of site evaluation and the preparing of the design to demo these facilities, along with some existing conveyance piping and basically grade the site to get it a cross-rock finishing surface in preparation for a temporary parking lot facility. One thing I want to highlight with this is the City of Wenatchee crews have already started some clearing and grubbing work and some grading work to take care of the south end of this site to have that serve as a temporary parking facility. When this project is designed and ready to go to construction and ultimately awarded and construction set to start, we'll shut down that temporary parking facility, utilize that for staging for the construction or demolition of this project, and then once it's demoed, the northern portion of the lot will be graded with a crushed rock surfacing put on that and reopened for temporary parking. So I think that is pretty much the highlights of what we're trying to accomplish here. And our recommendation is the council authorize the mayor to negotiate with Pacific Engineering and ultimately sign a contract on behalf of the city. The financial impact to this is we have the design consultant, Pacific Engineering, $33,500 to do the design. We'd like to have the option to extend that contract for construction services. So that would bring the total on the design and construction services to $49,000, and we've estimated in $200,000 for the full construction project. This has been would be coming out of Fund 405 and has been in the budget under project, I believe it was 1802. We're calling this component of that project Small Works Project 1905.
See, now that I have Brad's previous one, I can go back to 405 and see that was the sewer utility, which is what I thought it was.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Any questions for John? This is all part of the program to get some more parking down in the area, and they got to decommission whatever that thing is so they can get the parking in there. So
you can't just take a sledgehammer and knock it
oh,
down.
you and John go out there and do that all you want.
Okay.
Yeah. It may take you a while.
Yeah, we'll be doing a little bit of that, a little bigger machinery.
Yeah.
They won't let me operate it though.
Yeah.
I asked.
All right, I'd entertain a motion if we had one.
Your Honor, I would make a motion for the City Council to authorize the mayor to negotiate with Pacific Engineering for design services with option to add construction services for the wastewater treatment plant snow melt and old clarifier demolition project number SW 19-05, and further authorize the mayor to sign a contract on behalf of the city.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Markart to authorize the mayor to negotiate with Pacific Engineering for design services to demolish the old snow melt and old clarifier project number SW 19-05 and authorize the mayor to sign contracts on behalf of the city. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you
John.
for your
Appreciate
time.
it.
Yep, have a good evening.
All right. Jacob Heiler and Ryan Harmon, come on up. Is Ryan going to join you?
Nope, just me tonight.
Oh, you're not going to force him to come up? No, he's not even here? All right.
He's not here.
Okay.
Jacob Heiler, Engineering Services Manager. You've got me for the next 3 action items on here, all of which are relatively similar. So I'll give you a quick overview of all 3 of them, and then we can step through each one. So last year, the city applied through WashDOT's Highway Safety Improvement Program for several different grants. We were fortunate to receive 3 grants, but received notice after the budget document had been prepared for this year. So I'm here tonight to ask for budget approval for the city's matching portion of each of those projects. So the first one is a corridor analysis on 9th Street between Miller and the railroad tracks. What we'd be looking at in that section of 9th is, are we utilizing that existing pavement to its highest and best use? Or is there ways we could reconfigure the signals down there, the existing section, to better accommodate pedestrians, bicycles, truck traffic, you name it. So in terms of schedule, we'd be looking to start that very quickly. In our fiscal impact, it's about a $30,000 project, $27,000 of which would be funded through the grant program, and $3,000 would be the city's match. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Why don't you go ahead and just describe the next two projects, and then we'll
got it.
take the motions one at a time.
Okay. So the second project would do some safety improvements, primarily pedestrian related, down in the South Wenatchee area, specifically Okanagan and Spokane Street. So what this project would do is install curb bulb outs and new sidewalk at the intersection of Spokane and Okanagan. It would upsize some signs and install new channelization on Spokane Street, a couple blocks each side of Okanagan, as well as install some new channelization and signing on Cascade. So all kind of that area of town. In terms of schedule on this one, again, we'd be looking to start here pretty soon with the hope of getting it out to construction next year. Budget-wise, we're looking $228,400, $225 of which would be funded through the grant, so $3,400 in city contribution.
The third one?
Third one. So the last one is a safety improvement at the intersection of Miller and Montana. That's essentially a mid-block crossing of Miller between Cherry and Millardale Russell. And it's also been the location of a serious accident in the past. So what we're hoping to do is decrease the pedestrian crossing distance at that location, install some flashing beacons to make drivers aware of pedestrians wanting to cross at that location. And due to the schools and park in that vicinity, we think it'll be a nice improvement. In terms of schedule on this one, it does involve a little bit of right-of-way acquisition, which is why we'd be looking to go to construction in 2021. But again, be beginning design here this year. Fiscal impact, it's about a $250,000 project, $244,400 of which would be grant funded, the remaining $5,000 from the city. So,
And the city's contribution for all three of those, which $10,000, $11,000 all comes out of the 109 Arterial Street Fund. So it's, and there's money in that fund.
yes.
Okay. And the Finance Committee saw these all earlier today, so they sort of went through them. So if you have any questions for Jacob on any of the specific projects, if not, we can take motions or.
I just had one on the last one, which
Sure.
I agree, it's a mid-block crossing, which are generally more dangerous. Well, I have two questions. One is a Hawk style signal would probably be overkill, yet I was thinking of, we have two traffic, it sits right between two traffic signals that have a tremendous amount of traffic, particularly in the morning when everyone's chauffeuring their students to school.
Sure.
Would we ever consider, or is that just way too much for that setting?
So by and large, a Hawk signal is used when you have more than 2 lanes worth of traffic. The one that we have is obviously a 5-lane section on Mission. So, and they tend to be a lot more expensive. So the advantage to it would be you could program it to accommodate some of the cues out of the signals at Cherry and Russell. But I would recommend that we, based on the amount of lanes folks are crossing and the cost difference, that we would go with an RFP.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think it's a little bit out of the setting, but I'm still, because of the 2 traffic signals and the tremendous volume of traffic, well, not only in the morning, but the afternoon. And then I guess my next question about it is, we occasionally talk about safe routes to school stuff, but it's just like I'm never seeing anything. And and this would seem like a project that would qualify for that type of
We should spend,
participation at
Yeah.
that level with whoever does that OSPI and as well as Wenatchee Schools.
we should probably, I think we should do an update on where we're at, because I think we're doing better on safe routes to school stuff than maybe the council's not aware of, so.
Well, my question was going to be along those same routes because I think Councilmember Kulas pointed out recently that we really haven't done anything on Crawford Street, especially at the intersection of Crawford and Methow. And I'm wondering why that intersection didn't hit the radar instead of these other projects.
So can I interject there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Safe Routes to School, that program, we also applied for grant funding through that program, Keith, for the intersection of Crawford and Methow. We are waiting on, the funding for the program was dependent on the state legislature. That has gone through, but they put out a prioritized list of projects, and we fell within what was the expected funding level for that.
So we may have that one funded.
Correct.
Okay, I was just kind of surprised that it wasn't a higher priority than some of these others, but that's great that if we can get that funded as well.
Jacob, kind of back to the first one on the 9th Street corridor analysis. I'm assuming there will be some fairly serious discussion on 9th Street and Chelan there by the hospital, where that's just gotten to be a gridlock.
Right.
No left, trying to make a left turn make one car at a time basically is about what it amounts to. That's, we'll be in that, or taking a good hard look at that.
Looking at a protected left scenario there is certainly something we'd want to analyze as part of this project. One, it'd be safer for folks crossing where between the hospital and Old Hastings parking lot. The one concern there, which we'd obviously want to look into here, is if we were to do that, do queues back up east on 9th to a point where they're impacting the intersection at Mission.
Right, yeah. And it's also, it's not just cars in there, but there's a lot of pedestrian traffic moving through there. Particularly these, the Influence Health Clinic employees that are, coming from the other buildings across the street and got their little carts running through there, and sometimes it gets a little dicey.
Yeah, it's certainly a popular area that could use some improvement.
Yeah, okay, good.
That and our favorite intersection of 9th and Emerson as well.
Good night.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Any other questions for Jacob? If not, I'd entertain motions. We can sort of start with item G and work through I.
Your Honor, I move for City Council to approve the proposed budget for City Project number 1910.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Harold, second by Councilmember Poyer to approve the proposed budget for City Project 1910. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next one.
I'll make a motion for the city council to approve the proposed budget for city project number 1911.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Poyer, second by Councilmember Bailey to adopt proposed budget for City Project 1911. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. And Miller, Montana.
I'd like to make a motion for city council to approve the proposed budget for city project number 1912.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Markart, second by Councilmember Esparza to approve the proposed budget for City Project number 1912. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate it. All right, voting representatives for the Association of Washington Cities annual meeting. When and who's going?
So we have Lyle and Jim registered, and I'm not sure who else wants to go, but we have to send these.
What are the dates of it?
24th through the 28th.
It's when?
24th through the 28th of June.
In Spokane?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
So I'm not going to be able to go. If we just have the two, how many voting members can we have?
We can have 3.
Anybody else interested in going?
5 to 28.
Doesn't sound like we have it, so maybe we get a motion to approve Lyle and Jim as voting representatives?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2019-20, appointing 2 city council members, those being council members Bailey and Markart, as voting representatives on behalf of the city of Wenatchee at the Association of Washington Cities Annual Conference Business Meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Harold, to adopt Resolution 2019-20, appointing 2 city council members, those being council members Markart and Bailey, as voting representatives on behalf of the city of Wenatchee at the Association of Washington Cities Annual Conference Business Meeting. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, multifamily tax exemption agreement. We got 2 of them, 1301 Walla Walla Street, 1545 South Mission Street, Brooklyn.
Good evening, Council. Brooklyn Holton, Housing and Community Planner for the city. And we have the multifamily tax exemption program that was expanded in around 2017. And we have some developments that are wanting to take advantage of that. This one, is this the 3 feathers one? Yeah. Okay. And this one is on Walla Walla. It's right next to kind of where across from the Town Toyota Center. It's a new building. It's mixed use. The exemption will be for only the residential portion of the building, so they don't get an exemption for the commercial improvements that they provide. And that is something that we work out with the county assessor's office when it comes time for the exemption to go through. And so this contract gets put in place so that there's conditions on the completion of the project, and then upon completion and final certification from our departments that the project is fully complete and meets all requirements, I then move ahead with providing them a certificate of final exemption and then work with the county to put that in place on January 1st of the following year, which would be January 1 of 2020 for this specific project.
So with respect to this one, have they met all of the qualifications, or is there still a list of things they need to do?
Yep. Yeah. So the only thing that this one is finalizing for is the landscaping. They have a voluntary compliance agreement for that that goes through June. So,
Okay.
yeah. And this one will be for the 8-year exemption. They will not be doing affordable housing, which is what you need for the 12-year.
Well, I definitely want to encourage everything to help out with multifamily.
Yeah, no, I think from a policy standpoint, I think we're accomplishing what we need to accomplish. I think we have a ways to go before we might stop and say, okay, we've accomplished our 4 or 5% vacancy rate, and let's pull back from the program. So I think as long as they're taking advantage of the program, staffs, I think we talked a little bit about, so when does this apply? And I think we've said they're not going to get this until they finish all of the things they need to finish and then apply. And this one didn't apply in advance, but he still qualifies for it, so.
Yep. Yeah, and we actually will be updating the policy. We didn't have it spelled out very clearly, and the RCW doesn't provide very much direction either on how much of the project needs to be completed or how much can still be remaining for an application to be accepted. And so we will, going forward, now have the final certificate of occupancy be the indicator of qualification for the projects.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Brooklyn. Council members, any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move for City Council to approve Resolution Number 2019-22, authorizing the execution of a multifamily housing limited property tax exemption agreement with Wenatchee Housing LLP.
Oh, we're actually doing the one above that.
Okay, I was like, oh no, I have my stuff
We're doing the one above that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Same one.
I apologize.
They're the only numbers, the 2 and the 1, that will be different.
Oh, okay, motion, I move for City Council to approve Resolution Number 2019-21, authorizing the execution of a multifamily housing limited property tax exemption agreement with 3 Feathers LLC.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Harold, second by Councilmember Poyer to adopt Resolution 2019-21, authorizing the execution of a multifamily housing limited property tax exemption agreement with Three Feathers LLC. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Same song, second verse, 1545 South Mission.
Yep, it's a little bit different. So this one is with Catholic Charities. It is a 67 unit affordable housing that project that will be going up. They are using this exemption as kind of a layering technique. So with them being the nonprofit, they and providing at least 75% of the units for low income, they are exempt. But if their units, because they are income-based, if anyone within that increases income above any standards that are set for that year, their percentage may fall below that 75%. And so this will be a layering for them to still continue being tax exempt as they are offering affordable housing that meets our requirements under that. So this would be for the 12-year exemption. And they still have a little ways on their construction to go. So this conditional contract allows them a 3-year window to complete it. But they'll likely be done and be getting started either next year or which would provide their exemption to start January 1 of 2021 and then 12 years after that.
Okay. Any questions for Brooklyn? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Linda already did, but it was for the other one.
I'd like to make a
Do you want me to read
motion.
it
No,
again?
it's good. No, Lyle's doing
I'd like a motion for the city council to approve resolution number 2019-22, authorizing the execution of a multifamily housing limited property tax exemption agreement with Wenatchee Housing, LLLP.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Markert, second by Councilmember Kulas to approve Resolution 2019-22, authorizing the execution of a multifamily housing limited property tax exemption agreement with Wenatchee Housing, LLLP. Lots of L's in that one.
Is that a typo or is there really?
No, that's
No, I
good.
thought it was,
No.
but it's not.
Limited liability, limited partnership,
Yep.
LLP.
All right.
All right, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, Brooklyn.
Thank you.
All right, we have two public hearing items tonight. The first regarding code change with respect to drive-through facilities in our central business district. Glenn, is that you, Stephen? Looks like it's Stephen because he's walking up.
All the way from the back row.
So for public hearings, we will hear from staff and ask questions of staff. We'll turn it over to any members of the public that would wish to have discussions with the council, and we'll turn it over to the council for any action they may have. So Stephen?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So this evening we have a recommendation from your planning commission regarding 2 amendments to the Wenatchee City Code. The first one is a revision to chapter 10.10. This is the land use chart in our zoning code. And the proposed change would allow in limited opportunities drive-through restaurants in the downtown area. Currently, the historic entertainment overlay does not allow for the drive-throughs. The central business district zoning does, but the overlay supersedes that. And so as we're looking at adaptive reuse of structures downtown, in particular the drive-throughs. So there are only 2 drive-throughs that are operational right now with banks. One is one is operational, 2 exist. The Chase Bank has been decommissioned, no longer in use, and the Key Bank drive-through is on operation. The old Seafirst Bank drive-through is not operational, but the current owners are looking at opportunities for an adaptive reuse of that structure. And as we've met with the Planning Commission and looked at opportunities, the recommendation before you is to allow under these very limited situations, so existing drive-throughs to, at the time of if the ordinance were adopted, would be allowed to redevelop into a drive-through or a drive-up restaurant. So that's the first item, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of this amendment. The second item that we have before you is a revision to Chapter 12 .08. This is our critical areas chapter. You may recall at the end of the adoption in 2018, the Public Utility District gave some very late comments and expressing concerns about how these critical area ordinances would apply to their existing infrastructure, existing lines. So we've looked at that. We've worked with the Public Utility District and have worked with the Planning Commission to clarify the existing exemption to make it clear that it's for public and private utilities for use within their existing improved surfaces. So that may include new construction, the maintenance or repair. But those surfaces would include driveways, parking lots, concrete or asphalt surfaces, gravel roads, shoulders, rights-of-way, and easements, or previously developed utility infrastructure areas. And as we talked with the Planning Commission and the Public Utility District, they felt that this adequately met their need for being able to repair and replace existing infrastructure and not be impacted by the critical areas ordinance. Again, continuing forward though, this exemption would not apply if the work that was proposed would be impacting a stream or a wetland. And so again, that standard would stay the way it is. So the Planning Commission has recommended approval of this item as well, and staff has prepared for you an ordinance 2019-18 that would accept the Planning Commission recommendation for both of these code revisions. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
So under current zoning, let's just be specific. So the drive-through that used to be the drive-through through Washington Fed, or was C First, or whatever you call that. Under our current zoning, adaptive reuse wouldn't allow any sort of a drive-through at all.
Correct.
Coffee shop, anything that might have a car drive through, have a transaction and leave.
Correct.
Okay, and this allows it in very limited for only restaurants or coffee shops, or what's the?
Right, so uses that would meet our definition of a restaurant. So that would be a coffee shop, other drive-through restaurant.
So you mentioned the Chase Bank facility, and then there's also the Old People's Bank drive-through facility in the alley between Wenatchee Avenue and Columbia Street. Are we saying that those no longer qualify for this?
They would.
They would?
Yes.
So those are two additional ones besides Key Bank could hand out dollars and mochas, and I could do something at the Chase Bank facility as well as the alleyway one that People's Bank has.
So the Chase Bank one has been decommissioned, as far as I know. It's now being used for parking by the property owner. So it only.
That's the one on the alleyway?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah, so yeah.
But that wouldn't, that's not a spot for a coffee shop anyhow.
No.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know,
There's no
tasting
structure
rooms in
either.
an alley by
That's
the
true.
convention
It's a
center.
big wine tasting room though.
Right, there's no structure at the Chase Bank one either. So it was just a canopy with a tube.
Yeah.
So it'd be
Well,
tough
none
to
of them
get,
fit the description of the one we're talking about.
right.
Yeah.
Tough to get coffee through the compressed air tube.
Be interesting.
Muffins, yeah.
My other question had to do with the critical area code change. It was my recollection that the district was asserting that it should be allowed to move a line to, let's just say, a brand-new corridor that was not in an existing, had not been an existing use. Am I reading this, that this is affecting things that are existing, and it wouldn't mean if, for example, they wanted to move create a whole new power corridor, they would not be exempt from?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we wanted to be very clear and very narrowly look at this, that if they were, any utility, whether public or private, were putting infrastructure in a corridor that wasn't previously used for that, it would not be exempt.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I had the same question too. I had to do a double take, reread it and make sure that it wasn't like that, yeah.
Yeah, we share the same concern.
Any questions for Stephen, or should we turn it over to the audience? All right, thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Any member of the audience wish to address the council on this public hearing item regarding our code changes from community development. Yes, sir. Your name and address and social security number for the record.
Rory Turner, 1414 North Benoit. Thank you so much. You got a lot of work on your plate tonight, so I'll just be very brief, but we'd appreciate your council's consideration of this. It's a beautiful little structure. If you don't use it for a bank, you got to tear it down if we don't do something like this. And so we would like to have you support this. We think it's a good adaptive reuse of that. And I think truly, if we can work with the current tenant that's interested in doing something there, it'll be an asset to the community. So we would, again, ask for your support on this and appreciate anything you can do for us there. I don't know if you have any questions, but and we're
And for me.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Roy.
All right. Thanks.
Anybody else wish to address the council on this public hearing item?
We should note that Benoit is now in the city of Wenatchee.
It is? Oh, it is.
Oh, boy.
yeah.
Thank you.
You're a city resident now. Yep. Yes, sir. Name and address for the record.
Paul Schmidt, 609 Sage Hills. I guess the only question I have on it is, are you going to address potential traffic issues in any way? If, things back up, where is it going to go, depending on which facility they would use? Would that
So
be
what
part of
I
it?
would say is when it was a drive-through and they were running 20, 30 cars an hour through that place, I mean, that was already sort of dealt with back then. I don't know that a coffee stand is going to generate any more traffic than the old drive-through did. Probably doing less, to be honest with you. So it's already got curb cuts in and out. I think planning staff would have to make that you wouldn't require a traffic analysis for someone to put a coffee stand in, would you, on that location?
You rely on engineering partnership on that review, any new application, depending what it was, we'd evaluate it. Triggered in that respect.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so any application to put in the coffee shop would require may require some sort of traffic analysis, although quite frankly, to say that you're increasing traffic on Mission enough to require.
No, I don't think
other
you're going to
changes.
increase traffic.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, go somewhere, go to LA and go to any of the hamburger joints.
Yeah.
And they got traffic clear out on the streets.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking
In and
about.
out
Not,
burgers.
not within the property. I'm talking about when it gets out on the thoroughfare.
Yeah.
You
So
look
you're
at-
saying no In-N-Out burgers in this place?
Not yet. But I'd
Okay.
love to have one.
Okay.
Because when an In-N-Out's there, Wendy's is pretty quiet.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, anything else for the good of the order? Any members of the audience? All right, I'll turn over to the council for any action they may be willing to take.
Your Honor, I will make a motion for the City Council to adopt ordinance 2019-18, amending the development regulations of the city, including specifically Wenatchee City Code, Chapter 10.10.020, to allow for the adaptive reuse of existing drive-through facilities in the Central Business District and historic entertainment over for drive-in and drive-through restaurants, and Wenatchee City Code, Chapter 12.08.0803, to revise an existing exemption of the critical areas ordinance for specific use for public and private utility work in an improved surface.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Esparza, second by Councilmember Bailey to adopt ordinance 2019-18, amending development regulations, specifically Wenatchee City Code 1010.020 to allow for adaptive reuse of existing drive-through facilities in the Central Business District and historic overlay. And then WCC Chapter 12.08.080, subparagraph 3, to revise an existing exemption in the critical area ordinance for specific use for public and private utility work in an improved surface. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Stephen. Who's doing the white annexation for the fifth time?
Isn't it the truth? What a
And-
process.
And I'm guessing this is the
What a
fun.
process.
I'm not making fun of you.
Oh, I don't take
Is this the
that
final time we're
personal.
going to see it, or do we have to do two public hearings
No,
now?
we have a new process.
Oh,
Brooke
well, I
and
know.
Holton,
I'm just
Housing and Community
still learning the
Affairs.
process.
As are we.
Okay.
So, well, let me find which, here it is. So, just to kind of back up, the last resolution that I brought to you guys on April 22nd was misidentified in the motion, and so it did the public hearing, set that date, but then also included notification to the BRB, which wouldn't happen until today. So we went a little ahead of ourselves. So today is for that same annexation. It's to hold a public hearing to allow any community members that have comments in support or against of the annexation to have an opportunity to do that prior to it going to the BRB and the ordinance process beginning. And then upon completion of that public hearing, then we'll send notification to the Boundary Review Board. And then you'll see this hopefully only one more time upon adoption of the ordinance after we receive their status on approval or denial or no action.
Okay, so we'll have a public hearing,
That's this one.
and then
This one.
we'll
Yeah,
send
so
it
the
to-
last meeting scheduled this public
Right,
hearing.
so then we'll send it to the BRB, and
Yep.
if they don't do anything with it, then it'll come back and we'll just adopt it as an action item.
It'll be an ordinance, so we are still figuring that
Probably
out.
not an action item, but there won't be a public hearing. It'll just be at a public meeting.
What is it, if it's not an action item or in a public hearing, how else do we do it?
Oh, I was
This
thinking on
does
the
it.
consent agenda.
Oh, consent
It'd be an
agenda?
Action item, not on the consent agenda.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, just a regular action.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we all know about the White annexation. We've had enough. Any members of the audience wish to address the city council on the White annexation? Seeing no members of the audience wishing to address the council, I will turn it over to the council for their action.
Your Honor, make a motion that the council approve resolution 2019-23, providing for notice of intention to annex an unincorporated area located on the east side of Met House Street between Broad Street and Hidden Meadow Drive and bordered to the west by parcels in city limits, also known as the White annexation.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Harold to approve Resolution 2019-23, providing for notice of intention to annex an unincorporated area located on the east side of Met House Street between Broad Street and Hidden Meadow Drive and bordered to the west by parcels within the city limits, also known as the White annexation. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mayor's report. Not sure where to start. Sort of what I do now is I look back at my calendar for the last 2 weeks. So I think you all know this, but the Clennon annexation deal was final a couple of weeks ago on the 29th. So when we did it councilmatically, they had a referendum option. The referendum option wasn't executed, so the Clennon properties within the city limits of the city of Wenatchee. We've obviously had an apple blossom. A number of your city staff people were recognized at the All Service Club Luncheon for their great work on behalf of Apple Blossom, including Rob and Aaron and Elisa and a bunch of the Public Works staff. Complimented greatly on and I heard a lot of positive comments on the condition of the Carnegie building and the paint and how it looks now, so it really does look fantastic. So congratulations to all of you for helping make that happen. Spent a lot of the weekend with our Marsawa friends. They were in town, brought 26 adult delegates. Councilmember Harold was with them for some of the time as well, so, and 6 or 8.
We hosted a student from Masala.
Yeah. I was on a committee to help talk with our 2 ports, Chelan and Douglas County, regarding what started to be issues of funding and governance of the airport. Certainly went a little bit further than that, and we have recommended, and I think they're going to actually do a functional consolidation. So I think the 2 ports will, in essence, combine resources and sort of move forward for a couple of years and see how that works. Under a functional consolidation, there'll still be a Douglas County port, a Chelan County port. They'll just throw all their money in a pot And in order to do anything, they have to have 2 votes from the Chelan County Port and 2 votes from the Douglas County Port, so. But they're gonna adopt budgets. They think they can save $500,000 or maybe more. Because currently they do, I don't know, they audit the airport, they audit this, they audit that. They've got some salary changes. Lisa Parks, who we've been a friend here for a long time, is actually moving, I think, to Olympia. So she, the executive director, will end up being my brother, I think, of the combined entity, and Lisa's moving on. And so looks like that's going to happen. I think it's really for the betterment long-term. We are sort of running out of developable land, especially industrial land. Most of it is in East Wenatchee and either by the airport or other places. So the Port of Douglas County is in some financial problems. The Port of Chelan County is actually doing very well financially. So I think merging those two together to get more resources to help our friends in Douglas County. So they don't have to change any of the current tax structure. I'll get it. We're 22 cents, they're 17 cents or something. So we're actually paying a higher assessed valuation. They can leave it just the way it is for now and sort of pool resources. So what it hasn't done is it hasn't taken care of long-term airport capital needs. So airports are money losers. If you're Seattle, you break even because you have parking. So our airport is a money loser. They feed it to the tune of $500,000 a year just in operations, not even counting any sort of capital needs. So there's going to be a longer term discussion of how do we get more capital dollars to the airport. And they've talked about maybe some sort of regional sort of sales tax approach in a couple of years. So, but pretty excited about sort of combining those resources and seeing where that goes. I was in a homeless meeting yesterday with Commissioners Overbay and Straub just to talk about some issues with how the funding mechanisms are supposed to go before they go out to bid. So I think they're out to RFP or whatever they call it. So I think that's good. And I was also at Wenatchee Valley College last week, or yesterday. Yesterday is the girls basketball team hosted their NWAC championship banner in the gym. So that was pretty cool. And they were very thankful for that. Olympia, we sort of, my personal description of how we did is we did 0 for 2. We asked for NEPA funding for Confluence Parkway and that did not get funded. We presented them with a housing bill that we thought would help provide sales tax back to help with our Widener project. They passed a housing bill, but they took our language and everything and changed the percentages so it doesn't work for us. So it works for somebody else, but so yeah, can't tell you the level of frustration when we say this works for us and they change it and we say, well, that doesn't work for us. So I say, well, too bad. The stuff we got, and good for the stuff we got, was all stuff we were going to get anyhow, right? So the community college, Wells Hall, $34 million was the number 2 in the community college funding for capital. So if they passed a capital budget, they were getting it. Dave did such a great job with our parks programs that we were numbers 1, 3, and 4. So if they ever did RCO money, we were going to get all of that, right? So the things we got were things that we sort of knew we were going to get if anybody passed the budget. The things we had specific requests for that we thought would really help our region, we weren't able to get to the finish line. So a little frustration on my part. I'm just, Allison, would you describe that any different than that?
That's how we would describe it.
Okay. I'm just trying to be open and honest.
It is really tough telling the housing story and how trying to make a project at 80% of our AMI work. And
Yeah.
I think Glenn and Brooklyn are doing that in the update of the consolidated plan. They have a consultant working on running some of the numbers. And yeah, just again verifying that it is tough.
Yep. Yeah. That's all I have. Alice, anything to add on mayor stuff?
I think that's it. Good transportation council meeting this morning. North Wenatchee Avenue presented.
Yeah, so we did get some, and we'll get that to the council, I think, sometime soon, but we've got some pretty good plans for North Wenatchee Avenue. I think specifically the stuff around Maiden Lane and Starbucks Coffee. I heard there was another wreck there today. So that looks like that will be in our 26, 27 biennium. You know, that's part of the Connecting Washington money that we've got set aside. We're just getting designed and making sure that McKittrick and Maple and all of those are sort of designed consistently and look the same. And so thought it went pretty well today. And I'm sure the council are going to see those designs sooner rather than later.
Pick a date to bring that back, doing our stakeholder group meeting with the businesses, people that were involved early on. At the second or third meeting.
Okay.
So we'll find that all out.
And then next week, we have a lot of items on our,
Two things, again, lots of requests for work session time, and so Steve Crown has the presentation of the results of the WSU survey that was done of our police department and community. We're going to do that at the Public Safety Council Committee meeting, so if more of you want to attend, we can make that a regular business meeting. That's at 3:30 next Thursday, and then a long list of items for our work session. So the ATV folks are coming back. We've got IS annual report. We've got
Finance.
Finance Committee and working through the Western Foothills and the bonding discussion, and then Western Avenue striping.
Yeah. So for those that are on committees, make sure you make next week's committee meetings, both with Finance and Public Works, as we'll be talking about. They've got some preliminary numbers for some of the Western Foothills stuff, and we'll sort of be digging deep into one, what that might look like and how one may want to pay for it. Council members?
I have a couple of things that are not necessarily reports, and they'll just add to the list of things to study. The housing bill, 1408 passed, that creates sales tax sharing, or essentially an offset.
Yeah.
We get, the state loses, yet we have to, if we're going to take advantage of it, looks like there's a 6 months threshold, so we're probably going to want some discussion at the council level here before too long as to whether we're interested in that program.
So that's the specific program that when we drafted the bill,
Yes.
we wanted 110% of AMI.
It's 60%.
It's now, it got changed to 80, got changed to 60.
60 of the
So
county.
the issue is, do we adapt it but never?
Yeah, and that's what, I think what we need to evaluate, is it worth the $82,000 a year?
Yeah.
So that's one. The other one is, I want us to engage in more discussion. You know, we created council districts, and we really haven't done anything about it since. And I really think we need to have a discussion about strengthening the concept of our districts more than just being, I'm District 5. And I'd just like, you know, maybe in June, have a 10, 15-minute discussion of some, I have some ideas that I'd like to share that would strengthen the concept of council members representing a district, including our two at-large positions. I mean, it's great that we did. I think we just need to talk a little bit more about how we might change some of our systems to reflect the cultural and geography and the other reasons why we went to council districts, and spread that throughout our other operations. The last one I have is, I've been curious for some time, and this would take probably a couple of months, and I know the staff is really busy, and I'll talk to the mayor about this, but I'd like to examine our purchasing practices, particularly our professional services, and take a look at the past, 3 to 5 years of what projects have we been, mostly the A&E, architectural engineering, surveying, the professional consulting, what we've been spending our money on, the amounts, with who, and whether we're hitting any, and should we have some minority and disadvantaged business enterprise goals, as most governments do. And so I have a list somewhere. I have a list of things I typed up, and I talked to the mayor to see if it's something that staff could eke some time out on over, a 3-month period, to give us some statistics on that, things like, are we spreading the wealth among the businesses that are headquartered in Wenatchee, for example? Right. Are we hitting women and minority business enterprises that qualify through either our small works purchases or local stuff? And just take a look at what we're doing with our practices, and are we comfortable with those?
Okay. I'll tell you just, again, the ones that I sort of watch and see, for instance, we've done a lot of land surveying, and there's one survey company that does a lot of surveying for us, and he sends us a bill, and I go, that's a third of what it should be. I mean, I don't know how that guy makes any money. But, so I look at some of those and go, we're getting really good deals, and feel confident.
Yeah, and I'm
in
not
the
suggesting
stuff
we're
that
not. I just want to just holistically, so that we're familiar with, what are we buying?
Yeah. Yeah, we can run, even Brad can run a payable vendor and tell you how much RH2's gotten or how much.
Yeah, and I was
these
thinking,
folks by project.
not only
and,
money, but also the projects associated
Yeah.
with them. Just to have, it's just a curiosity. And like I said, I know a lot of agencies have moved to purchasing goals, and I think we should discuss whether we should be incorporating those sorts of goals in our purchasing practices as well to help those other businesses.
And we will get to some of that discussion with the update of our consolidated plan, because certainly with the practices within our community development block grant programs and our federal programs, that is a requirement of what we do. And so Brooklyn's in the midst of that process.
And one thing, we don't have any qualified Section 3 businesses in our entire region. And so one of the things that we're doing in our consolidated plan is to evaluate why and how can we expand that, start educating and provide even workshops to educate small business owners, minority and women-owned businesses as to how to qualify as a Section 3 business, because once you've qualified as a Section 3 business, you come up automatically within government contracts that include federal money. And so we're specifically working with our consultant to include that in our analysis process.
Yeah, and perhaps in the meantime, we take a look at our purchasing off of the MRSC Small Works roster, even though they might not be in our area, they still.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, council members? All right, so next week, work session. We're adjourned.